Hello, everybody. Yesterday, a few hours after making my video, I learned that, I lost a friend. Harold Bloom passed on Monday morning, yesterday morning. It wasn't easy to hear. I it feels truly as if I have, in a way, bonded with him over the last few years. I've read quite a bit of his theory. I've read a lot of his literary gushing. And in so doing, found certainly a kindred spirit. Today I thought that I would simply, since I really cannot think of anything else to do, I simply thought I would read to you the preface to Possessed by Memory, which certainly he was. He was possessed by his memory. There was so much in his mind, so much he had mastered, including most of Shakespeare, so much of his direct friends and colleagues, and even some of his students. And, I think it's appropriate, I think it's fitting, because really there is a lot in this particular book that I think really says everything he truly wanted to say throughout, across his career. I think this book says everything exactly as it needed to be said, as he needed to say it. And for me, this is the book that will, even though he's no longer here in person, this is the book that will keep me connected with him in every metaphysical, emotional way. Anyway, I think the best thing to do right now is just to for a moment let him speak a bit. Many years ago in Cambridge, England, I attended one meeting of a rather esoteric faculty group that believed you could communicate with the dead. It was a disquieting experience, with a gyrating table and spirit voices drifting in. I left rather abruptly because I felt out of place. Long before that, my charming mentor, George Wilson Knight, attempted to persuade me of his conviction that seances were authentic. I recall protesting that this seemed to me an over-literalization of a human yearning. George chuckled and said I was still too young to comprehend a vital truth. The poet James Merrill, a good acquaintance, sometimes teased me about my skepticism. Like William Butler Yeats, he called up spooks to give him metaphors for poetry. With both poets, the results were wonderful, whether or not sprites aided the imaginings. My own concern is rather different. When I read my departed friends, I have an uncanny sensation that they are in the room. Common readers, so many of whom are in touch with me, are very moving when they say that reading or rereading a book highly valued by their beloved dead comforts them. All of us wish that, when we experience sorrow, we could be shown the end of sorrow. If we are secular, that cannot be expected. Possessed by Memory is not intended to be a lamentation for my own generation of critics and poets. Instead, it hopes, in part, to be a living tribute to their afterlife in their writings. The other evening, I glanced at my writing table and saw books by many of my lost friends. There were volumes of poetry by John Ashbery, A.R. Ammons, Mark Strand, Alvin Feynman, and of criticism by Richard Rorty, Jeffrey Hartman, Angus Fletcher, and John Hollander. I have been close to all of them for at least half a century, and to most of them for 2/3 of my lifetime. I will be going on 89 when this book is published. In its composition over the past several years, I began to apprehend my ongoing writing as a dialogue with my long-dead friends. These include mentors like M.H. Abrams, Frederick Pottle, Gershom Scholem, Hans Jonas, and Kenneth Burke. Sometimes they were good acquaintances: Frank Kermode, Anthony Burgess, A.D. Nuttall, Northrop Frye. This book is reverie and not argument. My title is the book in a single phrase. What is it to be possessed by memory? How does possession differ in these? To possess dead or lost friends and lovers, or to possess poetry and heightened prose by memory? The range of meanings of the verb possess are varied. To own as property, to have power over, to master knowledge, to be controlled by a demon, to be filled with felt experience or with cognitive apprehension, to enjoy sexual intercourse, to usurp and pillage. The Indo-European root poti implies lordship or else potency. Possession ensues from potential, the sense of something ever more about to be. There is a kindling of effort, expectation, desire, and then an ebbing, as in the Shakespearean desire is death. Memory contains the composite triad in which the Kantian summa, freedom, God, immortality, transmutes into poetry's counter-summa, individuating voice, drawing down or augmenting a waning God, and bestowing upon us the blessing that is more life. In a poem, the image of voice is always a trope, listening for a tone you may have heard before your world was made. The blessing frequently coincides with a change in your name. When you have a poem by heart, you possess it more truly and more strangely than you do your dwelling place. Because the poem possesses you. Drawing down a god can be an esoteric procedure, yet poems at their strongest strike the lyre, and then the god becomes an issue of the strings. I think it's very hard not to connect with words like those. I think certainly that we all are. If we are writers, if we are readers, all of us here certainly are readers. I don't know if all of you are writers. I know some are. But we are all in dialogue with, most of the time, I think, with at least, readers like myself are mostly in dialogue with the dead. And for most of us who read the living, I think almost invariably we count it as a kind of privilege to know them. And then once they're gone, it becomes a privilege to have known them. And I do count myself very privileged to have known Harold Bloom and to continue through his books to be able to see him, to conjure him, and I think that using one's reading time as a kind of séance is a lot of the time, especially in the case of recently departed writers, when we're trying to cope with the loss of them. I think using one's reading as a séance is indeed very comforting. As Harold Bloom put it, it is comforting, and it is, I think, necessary to the process of grief. I know some people may think it ridiculous to grieve someone you never truly knew, but the real question is, don't we know, particularly artists, writers, in a rather large way? Maybe we haven't encountered their physical presence, the personality they have in, across a table, in interview, or in the case of Harold Bloom, across a room, across a classroom. I mean, I never knew, I never had that experience. I never heard, I never went to hear him speak. I never met him in the flesh and blood sense, but I really do feel I've met him here. And I don't know what I think that I think I will continue to I will take comfort in being able to meet him again and again. And I think that may be the best I can hope for. And I hope that his particular vision of the literary realm will continue to live on. It's valuable. So many of the things that he had to say are still valuable. And I've spent about 3 or 4 years arguing with him, agreeing with him, thoroughly enjoying him, and I hope to continue to do that for a very long time. And I'm glad this is what he wanted to do. This is certainly what he wanted to do, and he did it. And I do take great comfort in that. I know he was very sick for the last 10 years, probably. He wasn't well. So I certainly I feel for his family. And as one of his readers, as one of his, I can't really say indirect students, as one of his students, I certainly can put in my word on his value. And I hope, if none of you, you do have still the opportunity, if none of you have met him yet, if none of you have had the privilege yet of knowing Harold Bloom, you certainly can. You certainly can. And I hope that you will. It is certainly my privilege to still know him, to have known him in a certain way during his lifetime. And I know that from an interview I listened to on YouTube, it was a recording of a radio interview, he certainly had a deep appreciation for his students, and he saw the value in the reaction of new generations to critical work, to literature, to well, just in the general, the aesthetic sublime. So I take some comfort in that too, and I think really I should end this here. I should end this here, or I really don't know how to go on. And thank you guys for watching, for being here. That's really the thing. You're all here too, and I appreciate it very much. And I hope to see you all tomorrow and to talk with you further. And I'll just keep connecting to the departed and to everyone that you can. It doesn't matter whether they're dead or alive. Just keep connecting. And okay, I will leave it here for now. I'll see you all tomorrow.